All right. Hey, good morning, everyone. I love being on an Egyptian farm, especially in the ancient times. And that's where I'm at now. I love the sights, the smells, the sounds. What a wonderful place it is to be. So I'm going to choose to read here, provided they don't kick me out. I think I blend in pretty well. All right. So anyway, I'm going to read chapter 16. This is part five, the ring. This is about the ring, or at least a lot of it is. So let's get into it right now. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to just read right through with not much talking. So chapter 16, the gamble. Remember the name of the chapter is the gamble. Part five, the ring. The servants were laying the tables in the yellow paneled dining room of the princess's suite before Inanni returned from her mysterious errand. And by that time, Mara had thought long and uneasily about her absence. What did she really know of Inanni, save that she was homesick and unhappy? Very little, or the princess's sudden withdrawal this afternoon would not have been taken her by surprise, not have taken her so by surprise. Mara did not like surprises. The moment had arrived, she reflected, to converse in private with Inanni. Remember when she was with Chef Two and Inanni said, I'm going to go away. You guys can go talk. She's like, wait a minute. I didn't see this coming. What's going on? Accordingly, as soon as the meal was over and the Syrian women, still licking honey from their plump fingers, had wandered into the big sitting room to chatter or do needlework, Mara invited the princess to view the sunset with her from the roof pavilion. A few minutes later, they were emerging onto the breeze-swept loggia. Above them, the sky was flamed with sunset, trailing scarlet banners of clouds and tinging with the pink myriad white walls and buildings of the city spread out below. Even the Nile looked like a river of fire set between banks of unnaturally vivid green. Beautiful, exclaimed Inanni as they stood at the balustrade looking out upon it all. But there was a note of dismay in her voice, and she soon retreated to a couch under the partial shelter of one of the painted awnings. Mara, who was accustomed to the violent beauty of Egypt, lingered a moment to feast her eyes on it. It's very different, she said softly, from the sunsets of Canaan, I suppose. Aye, everything seems softer, and the hills thrust up to hide part of the sky, so that it does not seem so huge and fiery, and one does not feel so small. Mara, perhaps it is not wise we talk of Canaan. Very well, said Mara firmly, turning around to her. Then let us talk of something else. My princess, why did you leave me in the garden today? Why, because I had an errand. Inanni's great dark eyes met Mara's, and their expression changed. So be it, she said quietly. It was because of what I told you, Mara. That young man did not want to talk to me, nor I to him. He was seeking you. She's talking about Chef Two when they spoke yesterday. After a moment, Mara left the balustrade and sat down on the other end of the couch. How long have you known this? Since the day I first saw him in the lotus garden. Mara, I know other things too. I know the king has no interest in me, nor will he ever. And when I have audience with him, he does not speak of the things you say he does. There is a great trouble of some sort here, and I have somehow become part of it. Forgive me. I did not even mean to tell you this, but today it seemed too burdensome to go through it again. I should not have spoken of it, though. Why not? Why didn't you tell me long ago? Well, I felt it would be easier for you if I pretended I knew nothing, so that you would not be troubled about that part of it. But I fear I am very poor at pretending. Forgive me, and if I have spoiled everything now. Mara sat silent, wonderingly, studying the plump, anxious face before her. It is you who must forgive me, my princess, she said at last. You have shown me exactly how clever I have been. She got up and walked to the balustrade again, but this time she did not see the red sky and the thousand roofs of Thebes. Inanni had been sorry for her. For her. Think about that. Inanni felt sorry for Mara. Mara was the one who lied to her about the audience with the king. Mara made her look like a fool. And yet, instead of wanting to get revenge, you made me feel like a fool, I'm going to get you. She feels sorry for Mara because she believed, well, there's got to be a reason Mara's doing this. That's what I love about Anani. That's why I think she's one of the better characters. All right, let's keep going. And this is important to see how Mara changes, because she changes an awful lot throughout the book. Inani had been sorry for her. For her. It was a strange sensation, entirely new in her experience and bewildering. She wondered in some astonishment if she were going to cry, then decided that by rights she should be laughing hard, laughing at herself. She turned to Anani and knew suddenly that she wanted to tell her everything, tumble out the whole story and plead for understanding, to take down the bars just once and let another human being in. Remember, she's the only one that knows she's a double agent, a double spy. Do you want to hear the rest? She heard herself saying in a small voice. If you want to tell me, Mara. I do, but it's mad. They'll kill me if they find out. Inani's cheeks grew pale, but she spoke quietly. They will never find out from me, Mara. It would matter to no one save myself, said Mara with bitterness. I am not but a slave. All my fine clothes and my heirs are borrowed property. Not 4 weeks ago, I was starching shanties and stealing bread from the baker's boys. In Menfi, Mara walked back to the couch, kicked off her sandals defiantly, and curled her feet under her. And getting thrashed for it, as always. The whole thing began for me that day. A stranger in a white cloak came into my master's courtyard. She's referring to Nahira. It was easy once he started. She talked rapidly, though in a low voice, explaining her sale, the astonishing interview with her master afterward, her meeting with Sheftu on the Beetle, and all that had happened since. Inani's dark eyes grew round with wonder, excitement, and anxiety as she listened. Beyond them, over Thebes, the wild red banners in the sky faded to murky rose, and the east darkened, but neither of them saw it or knew it. So it is a revolution? Whispered Inani at last. Aye. And here I am tangled in both sides of it. At first all seemed simple. I had but to mention Sheftu's name to my master, and he would shower me with gold, give me my freedom. But now, Mara hesitated, then added reluctantly, of course, not as different now. I could mention it still. But you do not want to now, said Inani softly. Nay, I do not want to now. I am a fool, am I not? Inani shook her head. You are in love with this Sheftu. This Lord Sheftu. Denial sprang to Mara's lips and died there as her gaze encountered Inani's. She ended by shrugging wearily, leaning back against the cushions. Little good it does me. He thinks me a gutter snipe and says so, and tomorrow he may be... She stopped. She had not told Inani about the tomb robbery, nor did she intend to. He cares only for his king, she finished. You do too, Mara. You want the king to be pharaoh. Mara nodded. As I say, I am a fool. Why in Ammon's name should I fret over who rules Egypt? There is always a pharaoh, just as there is always a Nile. But such a maid as I could live her whole life without knowing which face it was beneath the double crown, or carrying a fig if she did know. Hatshepsut, what does it matter? I've my own worries, she broke off, adding, the trouble is, it does matter. Perhaps it is because you know him now. Perhaps it is, said Mara slowly. Aye, and because I have watched him and talked to him and seen him pacing up and down like a lion in a cage. Aye, he is a conqueror, my princess. Who else would have the wit to stage that miracle or go on plotting a revolution with spies all around him? Or spared a moment to be kind to a princess he does not want, said Inani with a smile. She meant the vase. Mara was suddenly very happy about the vase. Aye, he is kind too. He is a great man. And you, she told herself a moment later, are becoming far more interested in him than is good for you. Take care or you'll fall under his spell like Sheftu and throw your life and all your plans away. She got up angrily and padded over to the balustrade again, where she stood watching the last glow over the hills and curling her bare toes against the cool pavements of the roof. I'm a fool all the same, she remarked as Anani came up beside her. Will Thutmose ever notice or remember that I served him? I asked. All pharaohs are alike. I know little of pharaohs, said Anani, but I have seen the queen, and I have seen the king, and they are not alike. Ay, but they are. Look yonder. Mara pointed westward, where Hatshepsut's graceful temple shimmered in the blue shadows under the cliffs. Men died by hundreds in quarries to cut those stones for her, and others sailed to the end of the world to bring back the little incense trees. I know, I have been told of it. Yet tomorrow the king sends Sheftu, his nearest friend, on a journey far more terrible. Perhaps there is no one else he can trust. And perhaps Sheftu will never come back. More than perhaps. Then what good is he to the king or anyone else? Ay, there is a fool for you. To do that for any pharaoh. I told him so only last night. And what did he say? Mara's anger faded into puzzled wonder as she remembered what he had said. He spoke nonsense. He said, I do not do it for Pharaoh, I do it for Egypt. What does that mean? Pharaoh is Egypt, she shrugged. I didn't understand it then, nor do I now. I understand it, Mara. Mara looked at her curiously and found that her whole timid face was shining with eagerness, like a pale round moon gleaming through the dark clouds of her hair. In the blue light of evening, she looked almost beautiful in her shawls and draperies. You understand? Repeated Mara slowly. Then tell me, what did he mean? Egypt is not Pharaoh, Mara, nor is it that long green valley with its black mud that is so different from what I know. Egypt is neither the Nile nor the cities. Then what is it? You, Mara. I? And all the others, the people, all those you have told me of, and the fishermen yonder on the river, and the potters and carpenters and their like coming out of all those buildings far over there in what you call the city of the dead, and their friends and their kin. Inanni peered into Mara's face and shook her head sadly. Alas, that means nothing to you, does it? In your life you have had neither friends nor kin. Nor have I needed them, retorted Mara. Pity, like honey, could become too sweet on the tongue. She half turned away from Inanni, her elbows on the balustrade and her eyes, in spite of herself, on the stream of tiny white-clad figures winding through the streets far over yonder, who had suddenly become not mere figures, but human beings with friends and kin and homes to go to. Nay, perhaps you have not needed them, said Inanni gently, but many others do. I will tell you a little story. When my father was a young man, there came a great famine over Canaan, over all of Syria, and many flocks perished in the drought. And there were only a few who made harvest that year and had grain in their storehouses. And my father, who had been king for only a little while then, but who was very wise, called in these men and showed them the poor starving in the streets. And then he bade them bring their grain to his storehouses and their flocks to his pastures. And they did so. And until the famine passed, rich and poor shared alike from the common store, which my father divided among them. They did not do it for my father, Mara, but that Canaan might live. And did it live? Aye, the enemy from the north swept down and conquered many nations that year, when all were weak from famine. But in Canaan, there were strong men to defend the cities. The white-clad stream had all but disappeared in the blue dark, and the sky was a vault of purple. Mara sighed and turned away from the balustrade with a shrug. It is a touching story, my princess, if they spoke truth. But what has it to do with Egypt? We have no famine, nor can I imagine any rich noble I have met who would share so much as a grain of corn with those tomb workers yonder. Consider my well-beloved master. Aye, I could see him dividing his goods with his grooms and servants. Mara broke off, struck by a sudden unpleasant thought. Her last encounter with Lord Nahara had directly followed an audience with the king. If the Libyan came tonight, she's not ready if the Libyan comes tonight. My princess, let us go down now, she said hurriedly. It grows dark, and I too have a story to invent, one so convincing that it will pass for truth. Come, let us go down. I must think. Very well, Mara, said Inani softly. We will go down. She was silent as they hurried down the stairs and along the hall, but at the door to her apartment she stopped, putting a gentle hand on Mara's arm. Mara, I hope all goes well with you. I mean, think of that. Remember, she just forgave Mara, and Mara's the one who was doing bad things to her, and she says sorry to Mara and apologizes. It's really, really quite remarkable instead of trying to get even, with her. Do not fear for me, my princess. I'll think of something. Stay. I even have a talisman to protect me. Smiling, she plunged her hand into the sash and triumphantly produced the ring. Remember the ring Shefta gave her? Which she slipped onto her finger. It will bring good luck, provided I do not wear it in the wrong company, said Mara dryly. And now I will tell you something, though I know not if it's wise to do so. She hesitated, then whispered rapidly, the ring brought you luck today, as well as me. If all goes well, if all this we have talked of tonight comes to pass, and the king rules Egypt, then you need stay here and be homesick no longer in this land you hate. They will send me home, whispered Inani incredulously. I have Sheftu's promise on it. There, do not look so, or everyone will guess what I have told you. It is only an if, you know. You must not hope too hard. Oh, Mara, I will try not. Thank you, thank you. Inani tried to say more, failed, and hiding the radiance of her face beneath one of her many shawls, hurried through the door and into her chambers. The Syrian women were still at their embroidering and clattering, but Inani passed through their midst and went directly to her bedroom. I'm glad I told her, thought Mara. Very glad. Wrenching her mind back to her own affairs, she headed for her room. What was she going to tell that crocodile of a Nahira? She needed time to think. Perhaps, she reflected as she pushed aside the tapestry that curtained her door, I could accuse that spying little scribe of something or other. Say he was acting suspiciously, friendly to the king. She grinned as she closed the door behind her and turned into the room. Pompous little donkey. He would not last long if... Her thoughts broke off with a jolt. Chadzar the Libyan was there stolidly against the far wall, waiting for her. For a moment, she felt an overpowering desire to whirl around, dash back through the door, and seek the safety in the crowd of Syrians until the last one went to bed. A well-developed instinct for self-preservation prevented her. If she betrayed the least sign of panic, they would know something's wrong. She heard her own voice speaking coolly, almost indifferently. You come very early. I come when I'm sent, grunted Chadzar. Get a cloak. But I'm not ready yet. I came only to fetch the board of hounds and jackals. The Syrians expect me to entertain them until bedtime. That's none of my affair. She pushed away from the wall and walked forward while Mara cast about desperately for some other excuse to delay, to gain time. He scowled at her, switching his whip impatiently against his sandal. Make haste. Fetch a cloak. There was small use arguing with that restless whip and the look in that one eye, which had begun to gleam balefully in the Libyan's pale skin, brutal face. Mara found her cloak and flung it about her with trembling fingers. She would have to do her planning on the way. But there was no time to plan, no time to think. Before she could conquer her confusion, she was in the chariot, sweeping through the streets of western Thebes. The ride was as wild as before, but this time Mara wished it had lasted longer. In vain, she struggled to make her brain function as she stepped down into the dark courtyard beside her master's house, moved on reluctant feet through the little side door and into the hall. The same scent of wine and perfume drifted to her nostrils, the same faint echo of merriment to her ears. Cease your dawdling, growled Chadzar, giving her a prod with the whip handle. Think you he wants to wait forever? An instant later, she stepped into the small tapestry-hung study, and the door closed behind her. Well, came the chilly voice of her master. Mara's hands closed convulsively over the ring. Live forever, illustrious one, she heard herself saying. May thy shadow seek the light. May thy... Save your pleasantries for those who wish them, he cut in acidly. What news have you? Honored one, I have the best news. I was successful in preventing the king from sending away his attendants. As I promised you, every one of them was present during the interview. The hero said nothing, merely settled himself in a chair and waited. Mara hurried on. It was no small matter to convince my princess, I assure you. I coaxed and finally had to prod her a little. My princess, I said to her very severely, Master, my princess, His Highness himself believes it better to allow these menials to be present during the audience. Come, they might suspect you are afraid of them. Of course, she is afraid of them, Master, but she does not like to admit it. And that won the game. It had indeed won the game, though not quite in the way Mara implied. It was the king, not Anani, who had caught the significance of that phrase. They might suspect. He who had suddenly decided the attendants should stay in the room. Mara saw no reason, however, to mention these things to the granite-faced son of Set in the chair before her. Set is like one of their evil gods in the pantheon of Egyptian gods. Instead, she smiled as if expecting his praise and helped herself to a sweetmeat from his golden bowl. And so you see, I shall have this trouble no more, and there'll be every chance to watch for that messenger. You have not found him yet? I cannot be sure, she evaded. However, I kept a watch on the scribe as you instructed me. He's of small use to you. How so? The king knows him for an enemy. What chance have I to observe anything useful with His Highness guarding every syllable, every motion? I thought you said you would have every chance. With the scribe gone, yes, but while he is there, do I understand, said Nahira ominously, that you have come empty-handed again? She met his eyes and saw quite plainly that no evasion was going to work. Unless she produced some kind of information and produce it at once, this man would sell her instantly or do worse. Her mouth went dry and with sudden fear. She had nothing to tell him save the truth. And if she told him that, a wild scheme darted into her mind. Could she tell him a scrap of truth, a mere scrap, convincing yet not really dangerous? If she could control it, nay, it was too reckless. A mere gamble, the name of this chapter, The Gamble. Well, said her master. She heard her own quick laugh in her voice speaking. Nay, I'm far from empty-handed, master. The wildest gamble. She must not think of it, with the stakes so high, but what of her own stakes in this game? In 15 minutes, she could be back in her rags, dodging some new master's stick, tossed into oblivion like a handful of rubbish, which is trash. Look after yourself, Mara. Nobody else will. She threw the dice. That just means figuratively she's going to gamble. I have something, but I know not what to make of it. Perhaps you know that His Highness amuses himself by designing vases. Well, dozens of sketches were spread on the table there this morning. Big ones, little ones, all inscribed and decorated. And there was one of them, she paused, feeling herself teeter on the brink of a precipice, tingling in every nerve. To cover her dizzy fright, she turned away idly, reaching into the bowl again as she did so. Pray, have a sweetmeat, invited Nahira with heavy irony. You know, it's like, you're a slave. You can't just grab food from me. Oh, thank you, she forced with a mocking grin, and her nerves quieted. She sauntered to a chair and sank down on its arm. It seemed to me that the inscription on this one vase looked less like decorations than a message. A message? He was on his feet and standing over her before she could draw breath, jerking her up to face him. By Ammon, you'll cease this babbling now and tell me what you mean. I mean, it was a message. She pulled free and sat down on the chair arm again. She felt quite cool now and recklessly sure of herself. The tingling was gone. It was the name of a tavern. I'll wager it's where the rebels meet. Nahira stared at her a moment. Then he whirled, fetched a writing block and a reed pen from a box, and beckoned her curtly. Copy it here. She took the block, swiftly sketched the base, and began to draw hieroglyphics in a border around its lip. She could hear Nahira's heavy breathing as he leaned over her shoulder. Then a low sound, ugly with triumph, deep in his throat. He took the writing block, and he was smiling. "Ah, the Inn of the Falcon. Nay, you have read it wrong." Because Mara's freaking out now because now if he knows it's the Inn of the Falcon, the game's up. He's just going to send all his troops in there and then just find Sheftu in there maybe. Let's see. "Nay, you've read it wrong," gasped Mara. In dismay, she stared at the hieroglyphs she had drawn, and though they blurred and swam with her fright, she could still make out that the last one was no falcon. "You have read it wrong," she repeated, trying to steady her voice. It is an owl, master." "Aye, but you've set it down wrong, girl. That's the trouble. It was a natural error. No doubt you caught only a glimpse of the original, and it is easy to mistake the falcon symbol for the owl." "Nay, I saw it clearly. It was no glimpse. I took care to study it." He laughed almost amiably. "Then they too set it down wrong, perhaps by intention. Aye, small good it did them. They meant the Inn of the Falcon. You may rely upon it. I know the place." How does he know of that place? "You know it?" said Mara faintly. The tingling was back. It had become a roar in her ears, as if she had stepped off the precipice and were falling sickeningly through space. "We've snared them now," he was saying, half to himself. "So the pin is their messenger. Small wonder we've been puzzled. You did well to notice this, and I did well to buy you. But I'm seldom wrong. I know a clever slave when I see one. Come, choose a sweetmeat." "It seemed hardly credible that a great lord like you would know aught of such an inn. I fancy it's a dirty den jammed with raw waterfront riffraff." "Oh, I've never set foot in the place. But I know of it. I know of it. Stay, I must think." Mara drew a deep breath and bit into her sweetmeat. He knew it was too late to wonder how. There he stood, rubbing his hands, thinking how he would use his knowledge. She had better help him think, and fast. "You will set a spy to watch this place?" she began cautiously. "Aye, it's their leader we want, not a rabble of underlings." "It will be hard choice, master." "Hard? To choose the spy you want." "Nay, it's no problem. Stop chattering, girl. I must think." Mara chose another sweetmeat and strolled a little closer. "The innkeeper's the problem. Have you thought of him? I know the breed, and I'll wager he misses little, especially this one, Osiris, with the plot hatching on the premises. He'll let no stranger buy him, that's certain, as long as this leader is anywhere about. He'd throw out that scribe of yours in no time. Even the Libyan master. No man could get past him." Nahira was listening now. His head had turned toward her. Mara licked her fingers and flashed a glance at him. "But I could," she added. His chilly face did not change expression, but there was thoughtful calculation in the gaze that ran over her from head to toe. "Could you indeed?" he said. "Why don't you try me? I'm weary of the palace and the Canaanite. I can find the inn. I'm used to such places and used to talking my way in and out of them. I promise, I'm a match for any innkeeper." "What of the palace sentries?" "I've made friends with a few of them already, just to pass the time." "You need a taste of the whip, Miss Insolence. Who said you might thus make free with my orders?" "You never forbade me, master. What harm is in smiling at a sentry? I think one of them would let me go out for a visit to that inn." Nahira sank into a chair and drummed his thin fingers on the arm of it. "Nay, that's too chancy. Use my name. I've no doubt you know it by now." "Aye, Lord Nahira," said Mara demurely. "Your fame is far too great in Thebes to—" He silenced her with a gesture. "Can you leave that princess of yours without her knowledge?" "Easily." He rose and strode to a chest in the corner, leaving Mara giddy with relief. "Come here," he ordered. He had unrolled the papyrus. As she approached, she saw it was marked into squares and rectangles, like the rooms of a great house. "This is a plan of the palace," he told her. "Here is the guard room. Here is your own chamber. Near this stair, here are the king's apartments. And here," he jabbed a finger at a small square off one of the courtyards, is a study reserved for my own use when I am at the Golden House. Do you think you could find it? Mara nodded. Aye, down this passage and to the right. It would be the third door. The fourth. Now look you. He rolled up the papyrus and thrust it back into the chest. Go tomorrow night to the Inn of the Falcon. Go every night. You have only to give the sentry my name. I will send for you in 3 days. But if you learn aught before that, I want no delay in hearing of it. Go to my study at once if you have news. If I am not there, you will find someone who will bring you to me. I hope, remarked Mara, that this someone drives better than your Libyan. It will be the Libyan. He gave her an unpleasant smile. What you had best hope, impudent one, is that you can make good those boasts of yours. Hold on 1 second. Those boasts of yours. Did you not say yourself that I was clever? I only take care you do not become too clever for your own good. Now go. He jerked his head toward the door, and she went, trying to ignore this last remark. She was none too sure she had not already done that very thing. Still, she had won her gamble, she thought, as she joined Chadzar in the hall. The margin had been slimmer than she cared to think about, but she had satisfied the stony-faced one, saved her own neck, and saved Sheftu's too by arranging her own appointment as the spy that's going to watch the Inn of the Falcon. Moreover, she no longer need worry about Rashid, who had grown increasingly unreasonable lately. She could now walk past any sentry on the ground by mentioning Nahira's name. She had planned well. The only thing she had not planned was that Nahira should ever know the real name of the inn, but I think he already did. She followed Chadzar across the passageway. A servant flung open the door at its end and came hurrying toward them with a tray of empty plates. Attracted by the gust of music and laughter, Mara glanced into the room beyond him, caught a glimpse of blue-wigged ladies and courtiers grouped in a semicircle about a sumptuous table with great platters of fruit and a harpist playing. And just before the door swung shut, a figure darted into her range of vision, and there was a flash of golden balls. Who does that sound like? She stopped so suddenly that the hurrying servant almost crashed into her. He clutched frantically at his tray, and the Libyan pulled her on down the hall, muttering in annoyance. Does your master always hire entertainers for his parties? Mara asked him breathlessly. Would I know, impudent? He doesn't invite me to them, nor you either, I'll wager. Make haste. I've got other things to do tonight than answer empty-headed questions. Mara scarcely heard him. There were hundreds of jugglers and thieves, of course, but if the one she had glimpsed was Saur from the Inn of the Falcon, the hunchback guy who's really kind of creepy, then she was baffled no longer by her master's knowledge of the Inn of the Falcon. Saur did hire himself out whenever a chance offered. I have seen high and low princesses and slaves. He was always boasting about it. It all fitted into a pattern that had almost ruined her gambling. Perhaps the ring had saved her once again. Thoughtfully, she stepped into the chariot and braced herself for the bruising ride home. Saur had not seen her. That was a smile from the gods. So long as Lord Nahira did not decide to visit the inn himself, all was still safe. But she was glad Sheftu knew nothing of what had happened tonight. She hoped he would never know how fast and loose she had played with the fate of Egypt and his king. All right, that's it. We'll talk about that later, but I gotta run now. I've been out here all night, and now it's the next day. I better go have some breakfast. All right, guys, we'll see you. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.